Now, you've been hearing about a possible mole or spy or informant planted in the Trump campaign. Now, this is amazing. And I'm reading from PJ Media. There may have been an FBI spy interacting with the Trump campaign in 2016, Kimberly Strassel reported in the Wall Street Journal Thursday evening. She will be on this program in 20 minutes. Adding fuel to the long-held suspicions that an FBI DOJ mole had attempted to ensnare Trump campaign advisors in some sort of Russian collusion trap. The unmasking of American citizens, the use of a dossier with the Kremlin's input, paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC, leaking at the top levels of the FBI, abuses of power, in my view, by Mr. Brennan and Mr. Clapper and Mr. Comey, and the media defend it all. The media defend it all. What a useless bunch of buffoons who have become our modern-day journalists. How embarrassing are the Jake Tappers and the Chris Cuomos and the Rachel Maddows and on the list goes. How despicable. And they claim that they are the ones who want to pursue the truth. They don't want to pursue anything except Donald Trump. Now, this revelation comes after Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein again backed down after a protracted fight with Republicans on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, allowing members to view classified documents by the top-secret intelligence source that was part of the FBI's investigation of the Trump campaign. Well, we're not clear on that yet, actually. They're negotiating. But before I go past that too quickly, did you hear what that says? A top-secret intelligence source was part of the FBI's investigation of the Trump campaign. What is this, Venezuela? Cuba? What is this? The FBI and DOJ had apparently been hiding the critical information from congressional investigators for months in order to protect the top-secret intelligence source. Writes Strassel, in a Thursday press conference, Speaker Paul Ryan bluntly noted that Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes' request for details on the secret source was wholly appropriate, completely within the scope of the committee's long-running FBI investigation, and something that probably should have been answered a while ago. Translation, the department knew full well it should have turned this material over to congressional investigators last year, but instead deliberately concealed it. This would be the same Devin Nunes who's been trashed by Republicans, trashed by conservative talk radio hosts in the past. Nunes doggedly pursued the matter, last week issuing a letter and a subpoena demanding more details, but Rosenstein's response was to accuse the House of extortion and claim that declining to open the FBI's files to review was a constitutional duty. As I've said 1,000 times, show me where the Justice Department and FBI are in the Constitution. I can show you where Congress is. They have a whole article. Justice asked the White House to back its Stonewall, Strassel notes, and it even began spinning that daddy of all super spook arguments that revealing any detail about this particular asset could result in loss of human lives. The FBI and CIA's top-secret intelligence source, according to the Washington Post's anonymous law enforcement leakers, is a U.S. citizen. See, it was originally leaked to the Washington Post, so we know it must be true. Is a U.S. citizen who was involved in the Russia counterintelligence investigation. How do you like that? A mole planted in the Trump campaign, or somebody in the Trump campaign who was turned to become a mole. Explains Strassel, when government agencies refer to sources, they mean people who appear to be average citizens but use their profession or context to spy for the agency. Ergo, we might take this to mean that the FBI secretly had a person on the payroll who used his or her non-FBI credentials to interact in some capacity with the Trump campaign. a spy. This would amount to spying, and it's hugely disconcerting. It would also be a major escalation from the electronic surveillance we already knew about, which was bad enough. Obama political appointees rampantly unmasked Trump campaign officials to monitor conversations while the FBI played dirty with the surveillance warrant against Carter Page, failing to tell the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court that its supporting information came from the Hillary Clinton campaign. These are things I already talked about, but you know. Now we find it may have also been rolling out human intelligence, certainly I didn't know that, John le Carre style, to infiltrate the Trump campaign. Also potentially problematic is the timing of the spy operation, because it could indicate the FBI has not been straight with congressional investigators about when their counterintelligence investigation started. The Bureau insists that the basis for their probe was George Papadopoulos, his drunken ramblings in July 2016. But if the spy was put in place prior to that, the FBI has some explaining to do. And I never believed it was Papadopoulos anyway. Now, the Daily Caller's Chuck Ross details an odd interaction between Papadopoulos and Stephen Halper. See, some people are wondering if it's this Papadopoulos guy. I have no idea. Now, the Stephen Halper is a foreign policy expert and Cambridge professor with connections to the CIA and British counterpart, the M16. 2 months before the 2016 election, Halper requested a meeting with Papadopoulos and asked him a number of questions about Russia that made the junior campaign advisors suspicious. According to the Daily Caller, Halper met with 2 other campaign advisors as well. Judicial Watch's Tom Fitton commented on this latest shoe to drop in the Russia probe on Fox News. He said the Justice Department takes the approach of the modified limited hangout in terms of information it releases. That's true enough. So we're going to get into this in more detail with Kimberly Strassel, who seems to have a source or two, so we can pursue this. The unmasking of American citizens by Obama officials, the surveillance of an American citizen through the FISA court by Obama officials, the use of a dossier funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC with the Kremlin's fingerprints on it by Obama officials. Conversely, the unbelievable obstruction of the Hillary Clinton investigation by the investigators themselves. And while we're trying to sort this out and get to the bottom of this cabal, we're having to try and protect the President of the United States from this silent coup, which isn't so silent anymore. So I've been doing everything I can to use my noggin to try and figure out his best arguments and the best ways to fight this from a constitutional perspective. And I think I have. I cannot predict what the Supreme Court will do with this. Anything's possible. You got a few knuckleheads on there who read the newspapers and want to be loved. I can't tell how this will turn out. But it's coming to a head quickly on this subpoena. We'll see what happens. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Strassel of the Wall Street Journal. You've been pretty busy, haven't you?
A little bit. Hi, Mark.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Very well. All right, I want to jump right into this. You are telling us there's a spy, a mole, an informant, whatever we want to call it, who was working within Trump world and providing information to governmental authorities?
That would seem to be the case based on both what has been leaked by somebody within the government itself to the Washington Post in a story this week that described what it was that Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes is looking at, and then based on some suppositions about who this is on my own reporting. Yes.
You know, when you consider the unmasking that's taken place, when you consider what happened with that FISA warrant and then the extensions of the FISA warrant, the funding of the dossier, the people involved in the dossier, the leaking at the top levels of the FBI, the ex-CIA director, and the ex-National Intelligence Director all over the media pushing their narrative. Have you ever seen anything like this?
I've never seen anything like this. And by the way, I do think that this should rise to the level of scandalous. I mean, we are talking, and you know this well from your time in government, that the Justice Department and the FBI are required. There are guidelines that are put out to exercise particular sensitivity in election years and around election targets. And there seems to have been zero judgment exercised here in terms of the methods that they used and the extent to which they went after an active presidential campaign. By the way, in part, most part, based on the information of a rival presidential campaign.
Are we seeing a full cover-up mode right now?
Well, this is something that the Department of Justice should be held to account for in and of itself. And it was very notable, Speaker Paul Ryan yesterday, his remarks, because he came out and he said that not only was this Nunes request wholly appropriate, but that it was completely within the scope of the investigation that the Intelligence Committee has been running since the summer of last year, and that it's probably something that should have been answered by the Department of Justice prior to now. The translation is they knew they were supposed to hand over this information when Nunes first said he wanted documents about what the FBI had been doing in 2016 in terms of monitoring the Trump campaign, and instead they hid it. And that to me is remarkable, that you have an agency that is actively ducking congressional oversight and keeping things from the people that are supposed to be overseeing its work.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but events have been unleashed here. They seem to almost have a life of their own. We have a special counsel who's looking for reasons, in my opinion, to ultimately drive this president from office. And so he keeps, like the Energizer Bunny, he keeps going on and on and on. There's really two things going on here at once, right? I mean, on the one hand, we're trying to figure out what happened and what is happening. And on the other hand, the potential victim of this massive scandal is under investigation. Do I have this about right?
I think you do have it right in that it ties the hands. Think about this. We would know far more than we do now if Jeff Sessions had not been forced to recuse himself because of some hyped up charges from the left suggesting, I mean, that was always a ludicrous claim. As you and I both well know, the idea that a sitting senator was in cahoots with the Russian government. Come on. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But they successfully made
unless it was Ted Kennedy, that would have been very believable. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and then we have a special counsel investigating the president, and that has inspired, I believe, his lawyers around President Trump to advise him to keep a hands-off approach to the Justice Department for fear of risking further claims of obstruction. So the two most senior people, as it were, in the line and the chain that would have the ability to order the Justice Department to come clean on this are now basically rendered out of action. And it's been left instead to Rod Rosenstein, who was involved in some of this to a certain degree. We know he signed at least one of the FISA applications, and who very much seems to be an institutionalist. It all seems to be about protecting the DOJ and the FBI. And we have a bunch of conflicted actors there who are clearly never going to bring this out themselves. And so, yes, we are in this holding pattern, and that's why I think we actually all owe a debt to the members of Congress who continue to push us, because think about what we wouldn't know that we know today had they not just continued to go on this probe.
And in the case of one member in particular, who I think is the standout of the standouts, Devin Nunes, when he was going deep into this, all of a sudden out of left field comes an ethics complaint to sideline him for 6 months. And he's under attack by his own party members on the Senate Intelligence Committee, among others, talking about, oh, look at him, he goes to the White House. Oh, look at him, he doesn't know how to conduct an investigation. Which brings me to this question, Kimberly Strassel. Where's the Senate Intelligence Committee?
Well, the Senate Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr has focused, and he's very proud of his bipartisan committee and how he works so well with Democrats. I think that in normal times, and when you indeed have two parties that are acting like grown-ups, that certainly works. And you know as well as I do that for years and years, the intelligence committees in both the House and the Senate were viewed as the last bastions of grown-ups, people that did tend to put, to a certain extent, their partisan views aside a little bit more and focus on the very grave question of national security. But the Democrats have broken faith with that. And, even his counterpart there, Mark Warner, we know has been playing games. He's been involved talking without the knowledge of others on his committee with some of the sources and people that were involved in this affair. They seem to have put partisanship ahead. And that brings us back, by the way, to Nunes. One thing that always makes me laugh is that everything that Devin Nunes gets accused of by the left, supposedly that he's ruined the relationship on the Intelligence Committee, or that, they are leakers. That's not the Republicans on the committee. That's the Democrats on the committee. Every leak we've had out there, Mark, has come from the Democratic side, and every poisonous environment that we've had has come from Adam Schiff and others who have decided to make this entirely about party instead of country or truth.
Is it possible that there would be, we'll use the word spy, in the Trump campaign and Mr. Comey not know about it?
I find that very hard to believe. I will be honest with you. I don't like to talk about things I don't know, and obviously I don't know what the methods and approvals and protocols are for running a source within the FBI or the CIA. But it would seem to me to be fairly unlikely that a person that claims to have been as hands-on in this probe, because remember, there was a lot of people that were asking why this probe wasn't being run out of different parts or different offices of the FBI. Everything was handled in central headquarters, and he was right there. It would seem strange to me that he would not be aware of something like this.
I want to thank you for your hard work. I know you'll keep it up, and we're going to keep watching it, as is everybody else. Kimberly Strassel, thank you for taking time, and God bless you, my friend.
Thank you. You too.
All right, take care of yourself. Unbelievable.